Hello and welcome to Black Lady Tales. My name is Claudette Richardson, and I need you to take a deep breath before I tell you what my own daughter did to me while I was lying in a hospital bed recovering from a stroke. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon in March, 6 months ago. I was in my backyard garden in southwest Atlanta, kneeling in the soil, planting tomatoes. The earth smelled rich and dark, the way it does after spring rain. I had my hands deep in the dirt when I felt it. A sudden tingling in my left hand. At first, I thought maybe I'd knelt on it wrong, cut off the circulation. But then the tingling turned to numbness, and the numbness crawled up my arm like ice water in my veins. I tried to stand up. My left leg wouldn't cooperate. I opened my mouth to call for help, but the words came out slurred and thick. I collapsed right there in the garden, my face pressed against the soil. The last thing I remember before everything went black was the smell of fresh earth and the distant sound of my neighbor's wind chimes. When I woke up, I was in Grady Memorial Hospital. The fluorescent lights were too bright, and there was an IV in my right arm. And there, sitting in the chair next to my bed, holding my good hand and crying, was my daughter Simone. "Mama," she said, her voice breaking. "Oh, thank God, I thought I'd lost you." She squeezed my hand and I squeezed back as hard as I could. Simone wiped her eyes and leaned in close. "Don't worry about anything, Mama. I'm going to take care of everything. You just focus on getting better. I've got you." In that moment, lying in that hospital bed with my daughter's hand in mine, I felt safe. I felt loved. I had no idea she was already planning how to take everything from me. The stroke was mild, the doctor said. Some weakness on my left side, some temporary speech difficulties, but with physical therapy, I'd recover. They kept me for 5 days. Simone came every day. She talked to the doctors, asked questions, took notes. She brought me ginger tea and crossword puzzles. She called my friends from church. She seemed like the devoted daughter I'd raised. When they discharged me, Simone insisted I stay with her and her husband for a few weeks. "Just until you're stronger, Mama." It made sense. I was still unsteady, still struggling to button my own shirt, so I agreed. If this story is already making your heart hurt, please hit that like button and subscribe to Black Lady Tales so you don't miss how this ends. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I want to know how far stories like mine travel and what time of day you're hearing me. Those first 2 weeks were fine. Simone's husband, Deshaun, was kind. My grandchildren, Marcus and Aria, helped me with my exercises. But I noticed Simone spending a lot of time on her laptop. On phone calls, she'd taken another room. When I asked what she was working on, she'd smile and say, "Just handling some things for you, Mama." After 3 weeks, I told her I was ready to go home. I missed my own bed, my own space, my garden. Simone's face did something strange when I said that. A flicker of annoyance she tried to hide. "Let me just make sure everything's ready for you at the house," she said. "I'll take you home this weekend." That Friday, I went home. Everything looked the same. My furniture, my photos, my coffee mugs. But something felt different. Things had been moved, touched, examined. On Monday, I got the mail. There was a water bill addressed to current occupant. Not to me, not to Claudette Richardson, who'd lived in that house for 37 years. My heart started beating fast. The account had been changed. My name wasn't on it anymore. I told myself there had to be a mistake. Maybe Simone had put the utilities in her name temporarily while I was sick. That made sense. But then my neighbor, Miss Gloria from across the street, came by with a casserole. "I saw your daughter here last week with a white lady in a business suit," she said. "They were taking pictures of the house. You thinking about selling?" The casserole dish nearly slipped from my hands. After Miss Gloria left, I went straight to my computer. I pulled up the county property records website, entered my address, and waited for the page to load. The deed had been transferred. My name, Claudette Marie Richardson, was gone. In its place, Simone Richardson Walker. My daughter had taken my house. I sat there at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd fed her breakfast before school for 18 years, and I felt something break inside my chest. Not my heart. Something deeper. Trust, maybe. Or the belief that the person you raised would never look at you and see only dollar signs. I called Simone. She answered on the third ring, her voice bright. "Hey, Mama, how you feeling?" "Simone?" I said, my voice low and steady. "Why is your name on my house?" Silence, 5 seconds too long. "Mama, I was going to talk to you about that. I did it to protect you. If something happens, the house needs to be in someone's name so it doesn't go into probate and, come over here," I said, "right now." She came. 30 minutes later, she walked through my front door with guilt written all over her face. We sat in my living room, her on the couch, me in my armchair, and I waited for her to explain. I wanted to believe there was a reasonable explanation. Instead, she took a deep breath and said the words that destroyed what was left of my illusions. "Mama, you can't live here anymore. You're a liability. What if you fall? What if you have another stroke and nobody finds you for days? I can't take that responsibility." I stared at her. "So you stole my house." "I didn't steal it. I'm your daughter. It would have been mine eventually anyway." "Eventually," I repeated, "meaning when I'm dead." She flinched but didn't back down. She reached into her purse and pulled out a brochure. Shady. Pines Nursing Community. An old white couple smiled at me from the front, sitting at a table with a jigsaw puzzle. "This place is really nice, Mama. They have activities, good food, nurses on staff. You'd be safe there. And they take Medicaid, so after the house sells—" "After the house sells," I said softly. "You've already got a buyer." Simone looked me in the eye, and I saw a coldness there I'd never seen before. "The house is worth $400,000, Mama. That's my inheritance. I've already sacrificed enough taking care of you these past few weeks. Deshawn and I have our own bills, our own kids. This is what's best for everyone." I don't know how I didn't scream. I sat there calm and still, while my only child told me she was selling my home and putting me in a facility so she could cash out. This was the child I gave birth to at 25. The child I raised alone after her father died when she was 7. The child I worked 60-hour weeks for, double shifts at the hospital, so I could pay for her dance classes and cheerleading and college tuition. The child whose wedding I paid for, whose first house down payment I helped with. And she looked at me, 62 years old, barely recovered from a stroke, and saw nothing but a payday. "Get out," I said quietly. "Mama, get out of my house, Simone." She stood up, clutching that brochure. "It's not your house anymore, Mama. The closing is in 3 weeks. You need to start packing." She walked out, and I sat there in the silence of the home I'd built, and I let myself cry, but only for a few minutes. Because my daughter thought she knew all my business. She thought because I had a stroke, I'd lost my mind too. But what she didn't know, what she was about to find out, would change everything. Let me take you back 30 years, before the stroke, before the betrayal, to when I was a young widow trying to figure out how to survive. I was 32 years old when my husband James died. It was a rainy October night, and he was driving home from his shift at the post office when a drunk driver ran a red light. He died instantly. Simone was 5. I had $1,000 in our checking account, a mortgage, and no idea how I was going to make it. The life insurance paid off the house, the same house Simone just stole from me. After funeral expenses and bills, I had about $15,000 left. I had a high school diploma and 5 years as a home health aide. It wasn't enough, so I enrolled in nursing school at Georgia State, taking classes at night while Simone slept at my mama's house. I studied between diaper changes and grocery shopping. I took exams on 4 hours of sleep. 3 years later, I got my RN license. I started working at Grady Memorial on the night shift because it paid more. I'd drop Simone at school, sleep for a few hours, pick her up, make dinner, help with homework, put her to bed, then put on my scrubs and go save lives until sunrise. I did that for 15 years. Simone grew up thinking we were just getting by. I drove a used Toyota. We shopped at thrift stores. Our vacations were Tybee Island and cheap motels. I wanted Simone to understand the value of hard work. What she didn't know was that I was building something in the shadows. It started when I was 37. I was assigned to a patient named Mrs. Violet Harmon, a 78-year-old black woman dying of pancreatic cancer. She'd refused hospice, wanted to die at home, so I was her overnight nurse for the last 3 months of her life. Mrs. Harmon was something else. Even dying, she had this sharpness, this clarity. We'd sit together in her big Victorian house in the old Fourth Ward, back when it was still rough, and she'd tell me stories. She'd been a school teacher, married to a Pullman porter. When her husband died in '78, she took his life insurance money and bought her first rental property. Baby girl, she told me one night, they don't teach us this in school. They want us to work until we die. But there's another way. She taught me about real estate, not the fancy kind, but real working-class investing. Buy low in neighborhoods people are scared of. Fix them up yourself. Rent them to good people. Hold on, let time do the work. White folks been building wealth this way for generations, she said. We gotta do the same. When Mrs. Harmon died, she left me $5,000 and something more valuable. Her real estate agent's number and a note. Buy where people don't want to live now. Sell where people can't afford to live later. 6 months after her funeral, I bought my first property, a tiny 2-bedroom on Brownwood Avenue in a neighborhood most people avoided. The house was a disaster, broken windows, holes in the floor, stripped copper pipes, but it cost $28,000 and the bones were good. I spent every weekend for 6 months fixing that house. I watched YouTube videos to learn drywall and flooring. I painted every room myself. Simone thought I was doing volunteer work at church. When I was done, I rented it to a young couple for $650 a month. After mortgage, taxes, and insurance, I cleared $300. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I did it again 2 years later. Another distressed property in Vine City, then Pittsburgh, then Mechanicsville, then Lakewood. I developed a system. I looked for houses other investors ignored. Too much work, too ugly, in neighborhoods that scared them. I bought them cheap, fixed them myself or hired day laborers, and rented them to working families who needed a decent place at a fair price. I was a good landlord. I fixed things fast. I didn't raise rent every year just because I could. I treated my tenants with respect, and they took care of my properties. Every dollar of rent went right back into buying the next property. I didn't buy new furniture. I didn't take vacations. I drove that Toyota until it had 200,000 miles. Simone never knew where the money was going because I never told her there was money to begin with. Over 25 years, I bought 12 properties, small houses, duplexes, nothing flashy. I bought in Old Fourth Ward before gentrification, in Vine City before the new stadium, in neighborhoods people said would never change. And then they did change. Property values doubled, tripled. The little house I bought for $28,000 in '98 was worth $350,000 by the time I retired. The duplex I bought for $42,000 in 2003 was worth $500,000. By the time I turned 60 and retired, I owned 12 properties free and clear, worth approximately $3.2 million. They generated $18,000 a month in rent. I lived on my pension and Social Security and let the rental income pile up in a separate account Simone didn't know existed. Why didn't I tell her? Part of it was protection. I grew up poor. I knew what it was like to have nothing. Keeping my assets private meant no one could take them or pressure me to spend them. But the bigger reason was Simone herself. I watched her grow up alongside kids whose parents had money, kids who got new cars at 16, who had unlimited credit cards, who never worked. I saw what that did to them. It made them entitled, useless. I wanted better for my daughter. I wanted her to know how to work, how to struggle, how to build something with her own hands. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe if I taught her about money instead of hiding it, she would have respected it more. Or maybe she would have done exactly what she's doing now, just sooner. 5 years ago, my lawyer, a smart young woman named Tanya Morrison, suggested I put everything into a trust. Miss Claudette, she said, if something happens to you, probate is going to eat up months and thousands in legal fees. A revocable living trust protects your assets and keeps everything private. So I did it. I transferred all 12 rental properties into the Claudette Richardson Family Trust. And the house, my primary residence, the one James's life insurance paid off, I put that in the trust too. Technically, I didn't own any of it anymore. The trust did, and I was the trustee, which meant I controlled everything until the day I died. When Simone transferred the deed to her name, she wasn't stealing my house. She was stealing a piece of paper. The property wasn't mine to give because I'd already given it to the trust. Any transfer she made was legally void, but she didn't know that. She thought her mama was just a retired nurse living on a pension, vulnerable and confused after a stroke. What she didn't realize was that she'd just walked into a trap 30 years in the making. Simone thought she was taking everything from me. What she didn't understand was that she was stealing a piece of paper while the real treasure was somewhere she'd never thought to look. The brochure sat on my kitchen table for 2 days, Shady Pines Nursing Community. Every time I saw those smiling faces, my stomach turned. Simone came back that Thursday with more brochures and a laptop. She sat down without asking and started talking to me like I was a child. Okay, Mama, she said, loud and slow, enunciating every word. I've been looking at options. Shady Pines is the best value. It's $6,000 a month, but don't worry. Once we sell the house and spend down your assets, you'll qualify for Medicaid. I sat across from her, hands wrapped around my coffee mug, and said nothing. She turned the laptop toward me, showing pictures of a sterile facility with elderly people in wheelchairs holding balloons. See? They have activities, bingo on Tuesdays, a garden you can visit. Visit, not tend, visit. And it's only 15 minutes from my house, Simone continued. I can come see you every week. Every week, not every day. Once a week, she'd visit the mother she'd stuffed in a home so she could take a vacation to Dubai. Oh yes, I'd seen her browser history. Flights to Dubai, 5-star hotels. She'd already planned how she was spending my money. Simone, I said quietly, I'm not going to a nursing home. Her jaw tightened. Mama, you don't have a choice. You can't take care of yourself. I'm managing just fine. You can barely use your left hand. It's getting stronger every day. She closed the laptop with a sharp snap. The house closes in 2.5 weeks, Mama. I've already accepted an offer. You need to start packing. And then she started doing it, just helping herself to my life. Over the next few days, Simone came by with boxes and trash bags. She walked through my house like she owned it and started dismantling my life. She pulled photo albums off shelves and tossed them into garbage bags. You don't need all these old pictures, Mama. I'll keep a few for you. She opened my china cabinet and frowned at the wedding dishes James and I had received 40 years ago. Do you really need these? When's the last time you used them? She went through my closet and pulled out dresses. You're not going to wear this stuff at Shady Pines, you just need basics. I sat in my armchair and watched her erase me piece by piece. Every photo she discarded, every dish she deemed unnecessary. It was like watching someone dismantle my entire existence, and I didn't stop her. I sat there quiet and still, because I needed her to think she'd won. I needed her to get comfortable, to dig herself in so deep she couldn't climb out when the trap finally sprung. But inside, I was making plans. That Sunday, while Simone was at brunch, probably celebrating her windfall, I locked myself in my bathroom and called Tanya Morrison. Miss Claudette, Tanya answered warmly. How are you feeling? My voice cracked. Tanya, I need help. My daughter is trying to put me away. The warmth disappeared. What do you mean? I told. Her everything. The stroke, the deed transfer, the nursing home, Simone packing up my house. By the time I finished, I was crying. When Tanya finally spoke, her voice was cold steel. Miss Claudette, she can't touch that house. It's not hers. It's in the trust. Any transfer she made is void. I know, I whispered, but she doesn't. And she sure as hell can't touch the trust properties. Tanya continued. Does she even know about them? No. She thinks I'm just a retired nurse with a pension. Tanya was quiet. Then I heard the smile in her voice. Okay, here's what we're gonna do. Let her play her little game. I'm going to file an injunction blocking any sale. I'm also getting you evaluated by a neurologist to document that you're mentally competent. When the time comes, we hit her with everything at once. Won't she know something's wrong when the sale doesn't go through? She won't know until closing day, Tanya said. The title company won't discover the issue until they run the final search. By then it's too late, and when it falls apart, we'll have documentation of exactly what she tried to do. Let her think she won, I said. Exactly. Then we show her what real power looks like. The next day, Tanya sent a neurologist to my house, Dr. Patel, a kind older man who spent 2 hours testing my memory, reasoning, decision-making ability. He had me solve puzzles, recall lists, explain complex concepts. At the end, he smiled. Mrs. Richardson, you had a mild stroke with some residual weakness, but cognitively, you're sharp as a tack. Your memory is excellent, your judgment is sound, and you have full capacity to make your own decisions. He filed his report that afternoon. Tanya called that evening. We're set. The injunction is filed. The moment that title company runs their search, they're going to find a big red flag. How are you holding up? I'm okay, I said, watching Simone pull into my driveway with more boxes. She scheduled the closing for next Friday. Perfect, Tanya said. Let her get all the way to the finish line, and then we pull the rug. I hung up and opened the door for Simone. She walked past me without a word and headed straight for my bedroom. I followed and stood in the doorway, watching as she started pulling clothes from my dresser. Found you a spot at Shady Pines, she said without looking at me. You move in next Saturday right after the closing. I already filled out the Medicaid application. I can cover the first month out of the house proceeds. How generous. Simone, I said softly, do you remember when you were 8 and you wanted to quit piano lessons? She paused, holding one of my sweaters. What? You said it was too hard. You wanted to give up, and I told you that nothing worth having comes easy. Simone stared at me. Why are you bringing that up? Because I'm wondering if you remember any of the things I taught you, I said, or if the only lesson that stuck was how to take from people who can't fight back. Her face flushed red. She threw my sweater into a box. I'm doing this for you, Mama. You're not thinking clearly. I see just fine, baby. No, you don't, she snapped. And when this house sells next Friday, you're going to understand that I made the right choice. She stormed out, leaving half-packed boxes scattered across my bedroom. I sat down on my bed, the bed I'd slept in for 37 years, where James and I had whispered our dreams, where I'd read Simone bedtime stories when she had nightmares, and I let myself feel the full weight of what was about to happen. In 1 week, Simone would walk into that closing, pen in hand, ready to sign away my life. And she had no idea that in 72 hours, her whole world was about to collapse. Friday morning came with the kind of bright Georgia sunshine that makes you believe everything might turn out okay. I was sitting on my front porch with my coffee, watching the neighborhood wake up, when I heard Simone's phone ring through my open window. She'd spent the night at my house. To help you pack your final things, Mama, and was in the kitchen making herself breakfast like she already owned the place. I heard her answer, cheerful and confident. This is Simone. Then silence. Long, heavy silence. What do you mean there's an issue? Her voice had changed. The confidence was gone, replaced by something sharp and nervous. I stayed very still on that porch, my coffee cup halfway to my lips. I don't understand, Simone said, louder now. I had the deed transferred legally. My mother signed. She stopped. What trust? What are you talking about? My heart started beating faster. This was it. No, she never mentioned any trust. She has a stroke. She's not. Simone's voice was rising, panic creeping in. Can you just explain to me what this means for the closing? Another long pause. I could hear her breathing from where I sat. So you're saying the sale can't go through? At all? Her voice cracked. But I already accepted the offer. I already made commitments based on this money. I took a slow sip of my coffee. It tasted sweeter than usual. I need to speak to your supervisor, Simone demanded. This is ridiculous. There has to be a mistake. I heard her footsteps pacing back and forth across my kitchen floor, the same floor I'd mopped 1,000 times in the house she thought she'd stolen. Fine, yes, I'll hold. I stood up slowly, my left leg still a bit stiff in the mornings, and walked to the screen door. Through it, I could see Simone standing at my kitchen counter, one hand gripping the phone, the other pressed against her forehead. Her face had gone pale. The voice on the other end must have come back because she straightened up. Yes, I'm here. So what you're telling me is that the property is held in some kind of family trust, and my mother is the trustee, which means... She stopped listening. But she had a stroke. She's not competent to... I'm perfectly competent, baby. Simone spun around. I was standing in the doorway now, still holding my coffee, looking at her with the calmest expression I could manage. Her face went from pale to red. I'll call you back, she said into the phone and hung up. For a moment, we just stared at each other across my kitchen. What did you do? Simone's voice was barely above a whisper. I protected myself, I said simply. Something I should have done a long time ago. What trust? You never said anything about a trust. I didn't say anything about a lot of things, Simone, like the fact that I own 12 rental properties across Atlanta worth over $3 million. Her mouth fell open. Actually fell open, like in a cartoon. You what? 12 properties, I repeated, setting my coffee cup down on the counter. Generating about $18,000 a month in rent, all held in the Claudette Richardson Family Trust, which I created 5 years ago. The same trust that holds this house, the one you tried to steal. Simone's hand went to the counter to steady herself. You're lying. Am I? I walked past her to the drawer where I kept important papers. I pulled out a folder and slid it across the counter to her. Property tax statements, rental income records, trust documents. Take a look. She opened the folder with shaking hands. I watched her eyes scan the first page, the tax statement for the property on Brownwood Avenue, assessed value $350,000, then the next page and the next. This can't be real, she whispered. You're a nurse. You worked at a hospital. You drove a Toyota. We shopped at Goodwill. I know, I said. I wanted you to understand the value of hard work. I wanted you to build your own life, not wait around for mine to end so you could cash in. She looked up at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before in my daughter's eyes. Genuine fear. The house sale, she said. That man on the phone said it can't go through because you're the trustee, and the property is in the trust, which means you can't sell what isn't yours to sell, I finished. That deed transfer you did? It's worthless. You can't transfer property out of a trust without the trustee's permission, and I sure as hell didn't give you permission. Simone slammed the folder shut. You set me up. You let me think. I let you show me exactly who you are, I said, my voice still calm but with steel underneath. I had a stroke, Simone. I was vulnerable. I needed my daughter. And instead of helping me, you saw an opportunity. You tried to take my home. You tried to put me away like I was garbage. I was trying to protect you. No, I said sharply. You were trying to protect your inheritance. There's a difference. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Her eyes filled with tears, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage and panic. So what now? She asked. You're just gonna cut me out? After everything I've done for you? Everything you've done for me, I repeated slowly. Simone, you spent 3 weeks packing up my life like I was already dead. You threw my photo albums in garbage bags. You spoke to me like I was stupid. You picked out a nursing home and planned to dump me there so you could go to Dubai. Her face went red. How did you... You left your laptop open, baby. I saw your browser history. 5-star hotels, first-class tickets. You'd already spent my money in your mind. She stood there, trapped, with nowhere to run and no more lies to tell. I'm still your daughter, she said, her voice breaking. You're really going to do this to me? To your own child? And that's when I felt it. Not anger anymore, but something deeper and sadder. Grief, maybe. Grief for the relationship we'd never have again, for the daughter I thought I'd raised, for the trust that had been broken beyond repair. You did this to yourself, Simone, I said quietly. The moment you looked at your sick mother and saw a dollar sign instead of a person, you made your choice. Mama, please. The closing is canceled, I continued. The house stays in the trust where it's been for 5 years, and you need to leave now. This is my house too. I grew up here. No, I said, walking to the front door and opening it. This was your home. You turned it into a piece of property you were trying to liquidate. Now it's just my house, and you need to go. Simone grabbed her purse and her laptop, her hands shaking with fury. She stopped at the door, inches from my face. You're going to regret this, she hissed. I'm not done. I'll get a lawyer. I'll have you declared incompetent. I'll get conservatorship. You had a stroke, Mama. No court is going to believe you can manage millions of dollars in real estate. I smiled, not a warm smile, a knowing smile. Go ahead and try, baby. See what happens. She stormed out and I closed the door behind her. Through the window, I watched her get in her car and speed away, tires squealing. I picked up my phone and called Tanya. She knows, I said when Tanya answered. How'd she take it? About as well as you'd expect. She's threatening to file for conservatorship, says she's going to have me declared incompetent. Tanya laughed, actually laughed. Let her try. We've got Dr. Patel's evaluation. We've got 25 years of financial records showing you've successfully managed a multi-million-dollar portfolio. We've got evidence that she tried to defraud you. If she files for conservatorship, we'll bury her. She's desperate, I said. Desperate people do dangerous things. Then we stay ready, Tanya replied. I'll prepare our defense. But Claudette, you should know if she actually files, it's going to get ugly. Court hearings, testimonies, family drama on public record. I looked around my living room, at the photos on the walls, the furniture I'd chosen, the life I'd built. Let it get ugly, I said. I've survived worse. What I didn't know then was just how ugly Simone was willing to make it, and how far she'd go to prove I was incompetent. 2 days later, I'd find out exactly what my daughter was capable of when she was cornered. The summons arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by a process server who apologized 3 times before handing me the envelope. Emergency petition for conservatorship. Simone Richardson Walker, petitioner. Claudette Marie Richardson, respondent. I sat down at my kitchen table and read through the document, my hands surprisingly steady. Simone was asking the court to declare me gravely disabled and unable to manage my own affairs. She was requesting full conservatorship over my person and my estate. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks out. I called Tanya immediately. I just got served, I said. I know, I got the notification an hour ago. She actually did it. What does the petition say? I heard papers rustling on Tanya's end. She's claiming you're cognitively impaired due to the stroke, that you've been making irrational financial decisions, that you're a danger to yourself. She submitted a letter from a Dr. Eugene Kavanaugh stating that he evaluated you and found you severely impaired. My stomach dropped. I've never met anyone named Eugene Kavanaugh. I know, Tanya said grimly. I already looked him up. He's a semi-retired geriatrician with a questionable history. 3 years ago, he was reprimanded by the medical board for signing disability forms without properly examining patients. My guess? Simone paid him to write that letter. So what do we do? We fight, Tanya said simply. We've got Dr. Patel's evaluation showing you're fully competent. We've got your financial records proving you've been successfully managing complex assets for decades. We've got evidence that Simone tried to fraudulently transfer your property. We're going to walk into that courtroom and destroy her case piece by piece. Will I have to testify? Yes. And Claudette, you need to be prepared. She's going to try to make you look confused, unstable, incapable. She's going to bring up the stroke, your age, every little mistake you've ever made. Can you handle that? I thought about everything I'd survived. Losing James, raising a child alone, working night shifts for 15 years, building a fortune from nothing while the world told me I was just a nurse who should be grateful to have a job. I can handle it, I said. The next 2 weeks were a blur of preparation. Tanya and I met every other day. She coached me on how to answer questions, how to stay calm under cross-examination, how to present myself to the judge. Don't get emotional, she instructed. Don't let Simone's lawyer bait you into anger. Just answer the questions clearly and confidently. Let the evidence speak for itself. We gathered documents, bank statements, property tax records, rental agreements, maintenance logs. We compiled letters from my tenants praising me as a landlord. We got statements from my doctors, my neighbors, my pastor at church. We built a fortress of evidence that I was not only competent, but extraordinarily capable. The day of the hearing arrived, cold and gray. I dressed carefully, a navy blue suit, pearls James had given me on our 10th anniversary, low heels I could walk in confidently, despite my left leg still being weak. I wanted to look like what I was, a successful businesswoman who happened to be 62 years old. Tanya met me outside the courthouse. You ready? As I'll ever be. We walked in together. The courtroom was small, wood-paneled with high windows that let in thin winter light. Simone was already there, sitting at a table with her lawyer, a man in an expensive suit who looked like he charged by the minute. Simone didn't look at me when I walked in. The judge entered, a black woman in her 50s named Judge Andrea Franklin. I took that as a good sign. She'd understand things Simone's expensive lawyer might not. We're here on an emergency petition for conservatorship, Judge Franklin began, looking over her glasses at both tables. Ms. Walker, your attorney may proceed. Simone's lawyer stood up. His name was Richard Brentwood, and he had the kind of polished confidence that comes from winning too many times. Your Honor, my client has filed this petition out of deep concern for her mother's welfare. Mrs. Richardson suffered a stroke 6 months ago and has since exhibited behavior that suggests significant cognitive decline. He painted a picture of me as a confused old woman who couldn't manage her own life. He talked about my refusal to accept help, my irrational attachment to staying in a house that was too much for me to maintain, my sudden claims about owning properties Simone had never heard of. Then he called his expert witness, Dr. Eugene Kavanaugh. The man who walked to the witness stand was in his 70s, with white hair and a rumpled suit. He took the oath and sat down, folding his hands professionally. Dr. Kavanaugh, Brentwood began, did you have occasion to evaluate Mrs. Claudette Richardson? I did. he said smoothly. Based on the medical records and behavioral reports provided to me by her daughter, I conducted a comprehensive assessment. And what were your findings? Mrs. Richardson exhibits classic signs of post-stroke cognitive impairment, memory deficits, difficulty with decision-making, confusion about her financial situation. In my professional opinion, she lacks the capacity to manage her own affairs and would benefit from a conservatorship arrangement. I watched Tanya take notes, her pen moving fast across the page. "Thank you, doctor," Brentwood said, sitting down with a satisfied smile. Judge Franklin looked at Tanya. "Cross-examination?" Tanya stood up slowly, buttoning her jacket. She walked toward the witness stand like a cat approaching a mouse. "Dr. Kavanaugh, when exactly did you examine Mrs. Richardson?" He hesitated, just for a second. "I reviewed her medical records, and that's not what I asked. When did you physically examine her? What date?" "I didn't conduct a physical examination. I relied on the documentation provided and..." "So you never met my client?" "In cases like this, it's standard practice to..." "Yes or no, doctor. Did you ever meet, speak to, or examine Claudette Richardson in person?" The courtroom went quiet. "No," he admitted. "So this comprehensive assessment you described was based entirely on information provided by the petitioner, the same person who stands to gain control of millions of dollars if this conservatorship is granted." "I relied on medical records and medical records that showed a mild stroke with good recovery, correct? No mention of cognitive impairment in any of the hospital documentation?" Dr. Kavanaugh's face was reddening. "The daughter's observations? Are those the same observations from the daughter who tried to fraudulently transfer her mother's property into her own name while her mother was in the hospital?" "Objection!" Brentwood jumped up. "Relevance." "Goes to credibility, Your Honor," Tanya said calmly. "I'll allow it," Judge Franklin said, leaning forward with interest. Tanya turned back to Dr. Kavanaugh. "How much did Ms. Walker pay you for this letter, doctor?" He sputtered. I charge a standard fee for my professional services. $3,000, cash, correct?" He didn't answer. "No further questions," Tanya said, walking back to our table. Judge Franklin looked at Dr. Kavanaugh with clear disgust. "You may step down." Then it was my turn. Tanya called me to the stand. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face calm as I was sworn in. "Mrs. Richardson," Tanya began gently, "can you tell the court about your real estate portfolio?" And I did. I talked about each property, where it was located, when I bought it, what I paid, what it was worth now, who my tenants were. I recited rental income down to the dollar. I explained my maintenance schedule, my property management system, my long-term investment strategy. Judge Franklin was taking notes, her eyebrows rising higher with each property I described. "How do you keep track of all this?" she asked. "I have a spreadsheet, Your Honor. I update it every month. I also have a property manager who handles day-to-day issues, but I review every expense and approve every major decision. I visit each property quarterly to check on conditions." "And you've been doing this for how long?" 25 years, Your Honor." Brentwood stood up for cross-examination. He tried. He asked about the stroke, about my medications, about whether I ever got confused. I answered every question clearly and completely. "Mrs. Richardson, isn't it true that you hid these properties from your daughter?" "I maintained my privacy, yes." "Why would you do that if not to hide cognitive decline?" "I did it to protect my assets and to teach my daughter the value of self-reliance," I said calmly. "Unfortunately, it appears I taught her the wrong lesson." Simone flinched at that. Brentwood tried a few more angles, but he had nothing. The evidence was overwhelming. Finally, Judge Franklin held up her hand. "I've heard enough." She looked at Simone, and her expression was cold. "Ms. Walker, this petition is not only without merit, It borders on elder abuse. Your mother has presented clear evidence of mental competency and extraordinary financial acumen. Meanwhile, you've presented a paid evaluation from a doctor who never met her and testimony about your own concerns, concerns that appear to be motivated by financial gain rather than genuine care. Simone's lawyer started to object, but Judge Franklin cut him off. The petition for conservatorship is denied. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office for investigation into possible fraud and elder abuse. She turned to me. Mrs. Richardson, I apologize that you had to endure this indignity. You're clearly more than capable of managing your own affairs. The gavel came down. We'd won. I walked out of that courtroom with Tanya at my side, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. But when I turned around, I saw Simone standing by the courtroom door, crying. Not tears of manipulation this time, real tears. The tears of someone who just lost everything. And despite everything she'd done, my heart broke just a little bit. The months after the court hearing were quiet. Too quiet. Simone didn't call, didn't text, didn't show up at my door with apologies or excuses. For the first time in 37 years, my daughter was simply gone from my life. I told myself it was better this way, cleaner. She'd shown me who she was, and I'd protected myself. That should have been enough. But at night, lying in bed in the house I'd fought so hard to keep, I'd think about her as a little girl. The way she used to climb into my lap after a nightmare. The way she'd grab my hand crossing the street. The way she looked at me like I could fix anything. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being the person who could fix things and became the person she wanted to take things from. I couldn't figure out where it went wrong. Tanya advised me to update my trust documents. After everything that's happened, you need to make sure your assets are protected and distributed according to your actual wishes. So we did. I removed Simone as beneficiary. It hurt to sign that paper, but I did it. In her place, I designated my grandchildren, Marcus, who was 16, and Aria, who was 12. They'd inherit everything through a managed trust they couldn't access until they turned 30. Why 30? Tanya asked. Because by 30 you know who you are, I said. You've made your own mistakes and learned from them. You've built something of your own, or at least tried. At 30, money can't ruin you the same way it can at 21. I also set up education funds for both of them, full rides through college and graduate school, with living expenses as long as they maintained good grades and stayed out of trouble. And I created something else, the James Richardson Memorial Scholarship Fund, $500,000 to provide full scholarships to young Black students from single-parent households pursuing nursing or real estate careers. If Mrs. Harmon could change my life with knowledge, I told Tanya, I can do the same for someone else. The trust documents were signed and filed. My legacy was secure, but I still felt empty. Then, on a Saturday afternoon in early spring, I heard a knock at my door. I opened it to find Marcus standing on my porch, holding a bouquet of grocery store flowers. He was tall now, almost 6 feet, with his grandfather's eyes and his mother's stubborn chin. He'd been crying. I could see the red around his eyes. "Grandma," he said, his voice cracking, "can I come in?" I stepped aside, and he walked into my living room like he was afraid the floor might collapse under him. "I didn't know," he said immediately, still holding those flowers. "I swear to God, Grandma, I didn't know what Mom was doing. She told us you were sick, that you needed to go somewhere with nurses, that she was helping you. I didn't know she was trying to take your house. I didn't know about the court thing until after it was over." "Sit down, baby," I said gently. He sat on the couch, and I sat in my chair, and for a moment we just looked at each other. "Mom won't talk about what happened," he continued. "She just says you turned against her, that you chose money over family, but that's not true, is it?" "No," I said. "That's not what happened." "Then tell me, please, I need to know." So I told him everything. The stroke, the deed transfer, the nursing home threat, the trust, the 12 properties, the court case. I didn't spare any details, and I didn't make excuses for his mother. When I finished, Marcus had his head in his hands. "I'm so ashamed," he whispered. "She's my mom. How could she do that to you?" "I don't know, baby. I've been asking myself the same question for months." He looked up at me, and I saw something fierce in his eyes. "I don't want to be like her, Grandma. I don't want to grow up thinking money is more important than people. I don't want to look at someone I love and see a payday." "Then don't," I said simply. "But how? How do I make sure I don't turn out like that?" I thought about that question for a long moment. "You learn about money," I said finally. "You understand it, you respect it, but you don't worship it. Money is a tool, Marcus. It can build or destroy depending on how you use it. Your mama never learned that. She saw money as something she was owed, something that was being kept from her. That kind of thinking turns you into what she became." "Will you teach me?" he asked suddenly. "About money, about real estate, about how you built all this?" "I don't want handouts, Grandma. I want to learn how to do it myself." I felt something shift in my chest, something like hope. "Come by next Saturday," I said. "We'll start with the first property I ever bought." He came that next Saturday, and the Saturday after that, and the one after that. I taught him how to read a property listing, how to calculate cash flow, how to evaluate a neighborhood's potential. We drove around Atlanta together, looking at properties. I showed him the house on Brownwood Avenue, the one I bought for $28,000 that was now worth $350,000. "This is where it started," I told him, standing on that cracked sidewalk. I was 39 years old, widowed, working night shifts, and scared out of my mind. But I did it anyway. Marcus took pictures of the house, took notes. He asked 1,000 questions, and I answered every one. A month later, he brought his sister Aria. She was 12, sharp as a tack, with questions that made me laugh. "Grandma, why didn't you just buy new houses instead of fixing up ugly ones?" "Because ugly houses are cheaper, baby. And if you can see past the ugly to what something could be, you can build wealth." I started teaching them both. Sunday dinners at my house became financial literacy lessons disguised as family time. We'd eat pot roast and cornbread while I explained compound interest and credit scores and the difference between assets and liabilities. Simone found out. Of course she did. She showed up one evening furious, banging on my door. "You're turning my kids against me," she shouted when I opened it. "I'm teaching them what you should have taught them," I said calmly, "how to survive without me." "They don't need to learn this stuff. They're children." "They're old enough to understand that money doesn't grow on trees and that family means more than inheritance," I replied. "If that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you need to ask yourself why." She stood there on my porch, trembling with rage and something else, shame maybe or regret, and then she turned and left. Marcus called me that night. "Mom said we can't come over anymore." "How old are you, Marcus?" 16. "Then you're old enough to make your own choices. The door's always open." He kept coming, so did Aria. Their father, Deshaun, started dropping them off himself, giving me apologetic looks but not saying much. Over time, I began to understand something important. My legacy wasn't the properties or the money or the trust documents locked in Tanya's office safe. My legacy was sitting at my kitchen table on Sunday afternoons, asking questions about cap rates and property taxes, learning not just how to build wealth, but why it matters and what it's for. One Sunday, about 8 months after the court case, Marcus said something that made me stop in the middle of explaining tenant screening. "Grandma, when you die, I know Aria and I are supposed to inherit the properties." "That's right. But I don't want you to die," he said quietly. "I want you to teach me how to buy my own properties. So when you're gone, I don't just have what you left me. I have what I built because of what you taught me. I had to turn away for a moment because my eyes were filling with tears. That's exactly right, baby, I said when I could speak again. That's exactly what I wanted you to understand. Last month, Marcus got his first job working after school at a property management company. He's saving every dollar. He's already picked out the neighborhood where he wants to buy his first house when he turns 18. Arya started a small business selling handmade jewelry at school. She keeps meticulous records of her expenses and profits. The other day, she told me she's going to use her earnings to open a Roth IRA. She's 12 years old. As for Simone, we exchange polite texts on holidays. Happy Thanksgiving, Mama. Merry Christmas. Nothing more. The woman who tried to take everything from me is now a stranger who shares my last name. I've made peace with that. Some relationships don't survive money. And when they don't, it tells you everything you need to know about what that relationship really was. I'm 63 now, a year and a half past my stroke. My left side is stronger, though I still walk with a slight limp when I'm tired. I still manage my properties, still collect rent, still drive around Atlanta looking for the next opportunity. But mostly, I teach. I teach Marcus and Aria. I teach young women at my church who want to understand investing. I teach anyone who'll listen that wealth isn't about what you have. It's about what you know and what you do with it. If this story moved you, if it taught you something, if it reminded you to protect yourself and your legacy, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to Black Lady Tales, and share this with somebody who needs to hear it. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and whether you've ever had to choose between love and self-protection. I read every single comment. This community is my family now, the one that shows up without expecting anything in return. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. And remember, you can forgive people and still protect yourself. Those two things can live in the same heart. You can love your children and still refuse to let them destroy you. You can build a legacy that outlasts your life, not just in money, but in wisdom, in values, in the lessons you pass down. My daughter thought my legacy was 12 properties and $3.2 million. She was wrong. My legacy is sitting at my kitchen table right now, learning that wealth means nothing if you don't have character. That family means nothing if it's built on greed. That the most valuable thing you can leave behind isn't money. It's people who know how to earn it, respect it, and use it to lift others up. That's the inheritance Simone never expected, and that's the one she'll never be able to take from me. God bless you, and I'll see you in the next story.